When I was a child, I remember seeing a photo in a stack of old magazines. The photo I remember was from 1969. There was a fire on a river in the city of Cleveland. The fire reached 5 stories high. The fireboats battled the blaze on the water. 3 fire battalions brought the flames on the railroad trestles under control. This is the fire that you know about. And as a child, as I looked at that fire on the water, I only thought, water can't be on fire. But there were others in the Cuyahoga in Cleveland. The first fire was in 1868 in August. An ember lit the river, burned factories and millworks. In 1883, a fire on that river nearly burned the whole city down. In 1910, the 4th time it leaked a leaking barge, got a spark and blew the barge up and killed all the men on it. At that time, in the early 1900s, the city called for hearings about the dangers of the river and the fires on it, and there were no hearings. The 5th time and the 6th time and the many, many times after were similar. And the 11th time, the Cuyahoga River set on fire in 1952 caused an estimated of $1.5 million of damage, attracting national attention. But it's the last one that we know about. The article on the magazine was actually using the picture from 1952, but it was the one in 1969. The title said, "The Mistake by the Lake." Some of us remember this. Environmental disaster in front of our eyes. Environmental disaster for the city of Cleveland. In my teen years, I learned another story about that city. In an attempt to renew its image, in 1986, Cleveland's message was that it was a city on the rise, not to be the joke of environmental decline anymore. It had been 20 years since the last time the river was on fire. So they decided to release over 2 million balloons. A United Way would help raise the money. $200,000 cost. They brought in Disneyland and helium and built platforms, expansive nets that stretched over the city with balloons. They had marching bands from local high schools come to fill the balloons all night. 2 million was the goal to set the record. As the sun rose, millions of balloons sucking the helium tanks went into the nets. DJs played Any Bunny's Take Me Home Tonight and Sledgehammer by Peter Gabriel. It was Cleveland, by the way. The city of manufacture was once a city in decline, now would be seen as a city on the rise as the balloons would go up in a miracle way. Of course, that day the weather turned. It got windy and rainy, and they reduced the goal from 2 million balloons to 1.4 million balloons, still to break the world record. And at 1:50 on Saturday that day in 1986, 1.45 million balloons were released, a cloud of balloons that rose up through the rain, a giant cloud of color. Of course, you know what happened next. The city on the rise releasing these balloons didn't predict the weather. And so 1.45 million balloons began to fall. 240 miles away in Canada on Lake Erie, fish and birds died choking on Cleveland's balloons. A horse spooked in a county away broke its leg. An airport closed. Car accidents happened all over the area. Fishermen who had capsized in the lake during the storm were lost in a sea of colored balloons. I promise I'm not picking on Cleveland. But what did we learn? I grew up with the story of 3 Mile Island, of driving past Newark, New Jersey, holding our noses. The refineries smelled so bad it was a game we played in our car. How long could you hold your breath? I grew up watching the Meadowlands in New Jersey turn into hotels and football stadiums, of New York City rising as high as the Twin Towers could go, of large station wagons belching emissions onto stuffed highways. You get the picture. I also grew up lost in the woods in western Massachusetts at my grandparents' house, lost with my brother in moments of peace sitting on tops of boulders chewing sarsaparilla twigs, and moments like when the time we were lost and my brother ran off through the woods because he thought he had found his way home and left me there, a 5 or 7-year-old boy looking up through the streaming light that came down through the moose maples, and a feeling of sense of peace and awe despite my lostness told me that I was safe and I was home. The stories I heard of environmental destruction were, on the one hand, in my experience of reading Henry David Thoreau and walking through the woods that he walked through, were of awe and connection to everything. Knowing that there was the universe both within me and around me, having experiences that were mystical that happened in the quiet among the trees and the streams. In 1973, the Cuyahoga River was mentioned again in Time magazine. This time, the Clean Water Act had been passed by Congress. And what do you know about the river? It doesn't burn anymore. That same year, my Unitarian Universalist church held a Earth Day celebration for the first time. We made a mural in the hallway near the sanctuary. I colored a small frog for over an hour during Sunday school. And I saw around me people who were committed to uniting their spiritual lives, the experiences they were having in nature, with the opportunity to make change in the environment. 8 years ago, when I rode from my bicycle from Dallas to Boston, I went up through the green belt of Cleveland, designed by Frederick Olmsted. I went through the Cuyahoga National Park, past forests and canyons to visit my friends, Wayne and Kathleen. Cleveland renewed my faith in what is possible. One thing we keep getting told about the environment is that it is degraded beyond repair. I can't tell you how many times I've heard this in the last year. And I've asked, is it true? It is in some ways. The famous story of lost species is embodied in the one about the passenger pigeons in North America. In the beginning of the 1800s, there were 5 billion passenger pigeons in North America. The sky would black out when they migrated south. They would nest 850 square miles in Wisconsin. So easy to hunt, they would say that one shot through a cloud of passenger pigeons would bring down 30 birds. In 1878, 50,000 passenger pigeons were killed a day in Michigan alone. By 1900, the flocks were gone. The last passenger pigeon died at the Cincinnati Zoo in 1914 and is stuffed and in the Smithsonian today. We lose species every year. That is true. But many do also survive. Is it true that the environment is in total collapse? The story we are told is that humans are a disaster to all species. Is that true? There is one story that we could accept if we wanted to, that all is lost and that the end of humanity and most mammals on earth are near their end. But I don't think that's true. In our Unitarian Universalist faith, we have said that we believe that all life is interconnected. From the forest to the sea to humanity itself, each thread of being is woven into a single fabric of existence, the president and my friend Susan Frederick Gray has said. We embrace nature's beauty, are in awe of its power. We care for our environment so it must sustain life for generations to come, she says. Creating a sustainable way of life is central to our view of just and compassionate world. Our work must be intersectional, she says. Our goals start with the elimination of poverty, and for which climate action is an integral part. And I think when my friend Susan writes these lines, she means we, you and me, our community. If we can influence our city, our towns, our neighborhoods, we can change the direction of the environmental decline we tell ourselves we are in the midst of. And I think we have a few choices, and I think we must do three things. Three things if we're really going to honor this relationship with the earth and celebrate Earth Day and make any lasting change. The first is to cherish, to revere, to stand in awe today of the natural world. To stand under a tree and see how it thrives. To stand, as the poet Pierce says, softly on the globe. When she says, I'm ashamed to say that most days I forget this planet, that most days I think about dentist appointments and plagiarists and the various ways I can try to protect my body from itself. She means stop and be in awe. This morning, she writes, I stepped outside and the wind nearly knocked me down. This morning, I stepped outside and the blue nearly crushed me. This morning, the planet is so loud with its winds, its insects, its grackles and mourning doves that I can hardly hear my own lamentations. The first thing we have to do is to be able to walk out our doors and stop and pause and notice how miraculous the world really is. And the second is that we have to change something. Something big or something small. Maybe we join our climate action team here at the church who are launching this program for renewable power. There's 2 webinars that are coming up in next Sunday, April 25th, that you can attend. There's information on our website as they ask you to switch over to renewable power and to figure out if you can put solar panels on your home. You can change something as simple as fixing leaking faucets, buying efficient cars, stop taking bags from the grocery stores that end up in the garbage. You know something to do, I am sure of that. Our Unitarian heritage has people in it going back 200 years who are asking us to simplify, to create sustainable lifestyles, to ask ourselves how much we need and how to counter our every desire with decisions that contribute to the greater good. This is our heritage. I began to think about the impact of my Amazon account on the planet and started to wonder if I really needed that new flashlight for all the cardboard, the transportation, the energy put into it to arrive at my doorstep like it was Christmas every week. We can simplify one thing, and we can do that today and this week. It is our heritage to consider these things. And the last thing we have to do is change our heart. We can only change the climate, the environment we live in, the policies and the directions if we believe that we can. Nothing is won by disbelief in the outcome. Lacking vision, we cannot succeed. It is possible to change things in our world. That is our first hope. Margaret Renkel, a contributing opinion writer in Nashville, who covers all kinds of aspects of the natural world, wrote in March I've been keeping a collection of links to good news about the environment as a hedge against despair when so much of the news from nature is devastating. It's so bad, she says, that I've begun to mutter darkly about the end of humanity. So bad that sometimes I wonder if the end of humanity would be such a bad thing. Once we're out of the way, the earth might have a chance to recover before everything is gone, she says. You know it's bad when pondering the death of humanity cheers up a person who is really hoping to have grandchildren someday. She proved, though, that creatures we thought were lost forever still have a chance, she says. Conservationists recently discovered a female swin-ho soft-shell turtle, the rarest turtle in the world, in a lake in Vietnam. They've discovered other soft-shell turtles once thought extinct, nesting in Cambodia. And scientists have confirmed the existence of birds not seen alive since 1850 in Indonesia. She says that creatures we've never seen before are turning up. New species, previously unknown populations, like the bright orange bat with black wings in Guinea that has showed up, like the new clan of blue whales in the Indian Ocean, a new species of monkeys in Myanmar, and a spectacular green snake in India. New creatures are showing up. She says that renewable energy is edging out fossil fuels, that coal is on its way out, that the shift from coal power, particularly during the pandemic, has had a significant impact on reducing greenhouse gas emissions from power plants. I know you know that while our Texas politicians try to blame green energy for their own missteps, we know they are trying to create mirages to take the focus off bad policy and political bedfellows. But meanwhile, solar power is the cheapest electricity we have, which means that capitalism is now on its side, and even big oil is beginning to pivot from extracting carbon to storing it. We have finally started to plan for what we can't stop. Addressing climate change means we also need to mitigate the damage from what can't be undone. And the human ingenuity we have brought to bear on these problems is just starting to emerge, from wildlife bridges and tunnels that address ecosystem fragmentation, to bacteria that eat plastic, to drones that plant trees, to lab-grown meat, all beginnings of science's response to being responsible to nature. And conservation nonprofits are winning in court. For 4 years, environmental nonprofits fought hard against Trump administration policies and always won. The court stopped Trump-approved oil drilling in the Arctic waters, ordered the reinstatement of red wolf restoration efforts in North Carolina, halted plans to allow trophy hunting of grizzly bears in greater Yellowstone ecosystem, and forced the reconsideration of oil drilling on federal land in 5 western states. If we wondered about our efforts to support conservation nonprofits with every penny we can possibly spare, we see here answers. And if that wasn't enough hope for us, we see that people are also waking up to the environment. A Yale program on climate change communication says that more than half Americans now categorize themselves as alarmed or concerned about climate change. Americans who are either doubtful or dismissive now only represent about 18% of the population, however loud they are. Much about this issue still is contentious, but nobody, neither Democrat or Republican, wants to breathe polluted air or drink polluted water. The reality is that we are big-hearted, big-brained people who care about the world and care about what we do. And so, friends, the 3 things that we can do: we can cherish today, walk outside and look up and stand softly on the earth and be aware of ourselves, this mystical experience of the world that we are part of, that we are. We can change something simple today. We can join our climate action team and figure out how to support renewable energy in our homes or something else. And we can also change our hearts. We can listen to what is really happening and not give up hope. Because hope in this planet is the only hope that exists. The only hope that there is the hope in each of us. So, friends, we see there are no more burning rivers in our cities. We see what is burning is a desire in our hearts to make change, to be mystics in the world like our religious ancestors were, who asked us to live simply and asked us to evaluate our impact on the earth, not once a year, but every day. And to see hope in the world, a world that is changing, a world that is changing for all. So, friends, a good Earth Day to you. May your day today be one filled with winds that knock you over and blue skies that lift you up. May you look through the light in a tree today and see there the mystical connection to all, the interdependence of us all, and see there the heart of our faith. Amen and amen.